La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Buon Natale, bentornati alla Lanterna podcast. Welcome back and Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Fabry. How was the break? Did you have a good holiday?
Well, the break was very short. I did not watch it, but it was kind of cool to see also Serie B on Boxing Day.
I wish I watched it. I didn't.
I mean, I know that there was a great biscotto, which means like those matches where they kind of agree to each other in order to know what the end result is. And we need not to say who did that because it's quite obvious. That's nasty, by the way. I guess sometimes it happens for everyone. But what happened at Reggio Emilia, so that's the match against Sassuolo. So Genoa went on an away trip, and I guess our hopes were high, and the focus was there, except that small error that led to the opener for Sassuolo. But how did you see the match?
I mean, it was a job well done. I think it was three really important points, obviously. Like we were talking before the match, I think we were level with Sassuolo at the moment. It gives us a chance to leapfrog them, which of course we end up doing with the win, us getting 3 points and them getting none. I thought we took the match well. I mean, the first goal for me felt somewhat unfortunate, to be honest with you. I know maybe there's people who want to criticize somewhere. It was just kind of bizarre. You know, we were in their opposing half, mainly in their final third, and we had a lot of players forward. We kind of had this moment. We weren't even dispossessed. It was just kind of this errant kind of ball getting pinged around right in front of their box, and they end up with possession. But again, I don't really think that they stole it off of us. It was just kind of like hit someone's calf and it bounces this way, and then somebody can't really control it and whatever. And then all of a sudden they start pinging these like 3 aerial balls. It's just like, it was not even like a football play to me. And then they've got their forward on the break. And I think it ended up being Boni, who is kind of basically all alone against him. And this is barely past the halfway yard line. And I think Boni calculated in some ways correctly that, forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of the player from Sassuolo who was on the break, but I think he knew that he wasn't going to catch him. So he made a last-ditch tackle to try to clear the ball out. Didn't really get it clean, unfortunately. And then all of a sudden it's a break. It's 2-on-1. It almost seemed like we were going to get a stop because they just took forever to square the ball. And of course, who of all people gets it? But Pinamonti and does the ridiculous sliding celebration as if he's done something all season. It's like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, there's a reason you're playing for Sassuolo. And beyond that, like, there were some chances. Martinez had some decent saves, but I really felt like, you know, this still felt like a match that we had an opportunity to get some points for. And of course, we ended up doing that. We get our first penalty of the entire season.
Goodmanson, De Winter. Tolian gets a touch, and Volpato dispossessed by Thorsby. Check for handball and a penalty. It's just brushed the hand of Erlich, and a penalty has been awarded. Goodmanson to level for Genoa. Goodmanson. It's in. Consigli went the wrong way. Albert Goodmanson levels things up at the Mappe. Still half an hour left to play here.
We called it out, meaning that there was no penalty, like insanity. And essentially it was like, come on, we have to get one. Not that I necessarily needed it or wanted it, but it did come.
I wanted it.
Well, it feels like at least, I don't know, the gods are back or something, right?
Back in our favor. And then, but I think we have to say, like, it's Ekuban. Like, what is going on with this guy? Like, what an amazing, amazing goal to seal the win for us. I was so happy at seeing him so happy after the match and players happy for him. Shouts, as always, to the traveling support, by the way. I messaged on the group chat. For a second, I thought we were at home because of how loud it was. So he had this amazing opportunity, this great goal, scored in front of the fans. We know Esteban has kind of been not always seen the most positively among us Genoano, but he's just done so well these last few matches, and very happy for him to get a goal like that, because I feel like it's been really since the beginning of the Serie B campaign when we saw him scoring like that.
Goodmanson, Erlich has been beaten to it by Ekuban. Ekuban! The long wait for the Ghanaian is over. Caleb Ekuban has surely won it for Genoa now. 19 Serie A games without a goal, and the man drafted in to make up for the injuries in the Genoa squad has now got the winner. Genoa come from a goal down to beat Sassuolo at the Mapei Stadium. It is Il Grifone's away win.
It was a great way to cap off. I think a pretty job well done against not a terrible side at Sassuolo. I don't think Sassuolo were sleepwalking into this match. Honestly, our form wasn't that much better than theirs going into it. So it was an important 3 points.
I guess similarly to us, they've been having like a tough season for the quality that they have on the pitch, and especially on the type of gameplay that they have. And they're kind of undeservedly at the levels where they are right now. But at the same time, we went there viso aperto, as we say in Italian, like open face, like we're not fearful of anyone, essentially. Yeah. And to your point, these 2 goals can only testify the statistics that call for 3 shots on goal for them. At least this is ones I'm reading. Sometimes they're different depending on where you're looking at it, and against the 5 on goal for us. And we didn't sleep. They definitely didn't. It's not that they had barely. You could see several actions that they were dangerous too. And actually, I have to say, besides that, the goal that was absolutely 100% that Martinez could have done nothing to save it, other than just be lucky per se. But he has done also a couple of great saves, one on Pinamonti, or maybe both on him, or something to that matter. But he did a very great job. Once again, people are always afraid of Martinez, but I think he is also such a great goalie as well. And I think I really appreciate him because he's crazy too. So he's crazy and talented at the same time. And that gives you that adrenaline level. They're like, oh my God, what is he going to do? Wow, what a save type of thing, right?
That's what you need in the keeper. You need this guy to be totally nuts and confident. And look, you're right. It's not exactly fair to say we dominated the match. I think a win is a fair result. I don't think we got lucky, but also like we were a good save or 2 away from this being a draw for sure. And so I think it's a good time and a good note to get 3 points. You know, again, we've not had the most perfect form, particularly given our opponents these last several weeks, but it's an important win, and it leaves us in 13th position on 19 points. All of a sudden, by the way, we're above Frosinone in the pecking order on goal difference, which is the first time, I think, all season that we've been that way ahead of them. Kind of a statistic for party favors or trivia or something like that. But I do think it's interesting, given how strong Frosinone began the campaign, that now we're sitting above them in 13th position.
At par points, but still. Yes.
Still ahead. And you look above us, and you've got Lecce a point ahead of us. Monza at 21 points, we're on 19. And in 10th spot and 9th spot, you have Torino and Lazio at 24. So, I mean, look, we've got a long season to go. I think we still are mainly focusing on consolidation, but it's kind of exciting to think that we're not totally out of the pecking order of getting even higher up in the table than I think we were maybe imagining this year.
It's absolutely true. Obviously, I think with respects to where we are currently, based on what the expectations were, we're a little bit below expectations again. But at the same time, we've had a tough season with all the injuries, and I'm not like playing any type of excuse here. But obviously, between the first year of our coach in Serie A, a lot of new players. Then we had several, and a lot, especially up front, injuries and so on. I think we did the best that we could have done, perhaps. And I'm happy and satisfied anyways. I mean, I've never really seen it, except like those couple of losses that we're like, oh, come on. Like, the first one that comes to mind is like the Monza match. And maybe other couple matches.
Torino was kind of tough too earlier on. It seemed like that was
Well, yeah, those ones add to the well, maybe not Monza is not the great example, but I'm trying to think of where we didn't kind of put any type of
Empoli as well. Like there's some matches
exactly.
like
exactly. So those are those kind of reniforms that you were like, what's going on here? Why aren't they even doing anything? Because it showed that they didn't really care much, and it seemed almost at a certain point that we were only showing up. I mean, talking about the players, only against the big teams. And I'm like, okay, are you only trying to shine against them and nothing about anybody else? But this was the matches, and we hadn't win on the road since at the beginning of the season against Lazio. So it was long overdue.
Yeah, well, that's an important point too. We have had rotating kind of levels of form in the last two seasons under Blessin and Gilardino, respectively, in terms of our home form and our away form, and we've not always been getting results away from home. I think some of that is kind of more in the norm of what you might think would happen, but this was a good result for us given that we were on the road, and you can say whatever you want to say about Sassuolo, but we're still traveling to Sassuolo to play the match, and we're not in Genova. We're not having the luxury of not having to get on a bus and go somewhere. Yeah, and I think when you look at it too, like at the end of it, like you're totally right. I think this last several matches, we knew that it was a really critical period of time because we were playing teams that seemed like we could maybe get some points off of. I mean, you go back to 5 matches ago, we're playing Frosinone, we lose the match. We talked about drawing against Empoli. You lost against Monza. You had a draw against Juventus, which is fantastic. And then a win against Sassuolo. But at the end of the day, even though some of those other earlier matches were maybe not what we would have expected, we still net out with 5 points from 5 matches, which is effectively exactly what we're trying to do this season, with getting a little bit more than a point per match week to get into that 40-point kind of safe zone. And indeed, we're a little bit ahead of that right now with 17 matches played and 19 points gained. So, perspective, it's easier to say this after a win and to be a little bit more calm.
Absolutely right.
We've definitely gone off the rails in the opposite direction and after those other matches, and probably don't have to go very far back to hear us kind of reacting that way. But it's good. And it's especially good because now we're playing, the juggernauts of the campaign in Inter in our next match, alone at the top with 44 points, 4 points ahead of second place Juventus. So,
not to mention the surprise of this leg, anyways, or this year, Bologna, which will be the last
Champions League.
Yes, they are 4th spot, and that will be our last match for the first leg. And honestly, I guess we pulled out of the best amount of points in the last 2 matches, looking towards the next 2 ones, which are kind of like tough ones, because Inter will be we'll talk about it soon, but Inter at home and then Bologna away. It's not going to be easy to gather some points there.
Yeah, it's both of these are going to be challenging matches for us, obviously. And Bologna, right, like we probably wouldn't have circled this match at the beginning of the season and said, man, look out for Bologna away, but like they're in an excellent form, sitting in 4th spot, and they've had a wonderful campaign. I think like one thing that's kind of good for us, I guess, is when you look around us in the table, at least with this current match week, most of the sides in and around where we are have pretty difficult opposition as well. I mean, obviously we have Inter, so we kind of get the worst draw out of it, but you go down to 17th spot, Udinese play Bologna. Verona maybe are in a better place. They're playing bottom Salernitana. Sassuolo play Milan. Frosinone right level with us, play Lazio. Of course, we have Inter. Lecce just above us have Atalanta. Monza have Napoli. Torino have Fiorentina. So you've got a lot of kind of interesting matches. It'll be really curious to see what ends up happening in this match week, because right where we are, just about every team has a difficult matchup, and I'm not sure how that looks for match week 19, but it represents, you don't want to say an opportunity, because I know the Inter match is going to be one where we're going to want to do a good accounting of ourselves. We're going to want to approach the match as best as we can, but maybe we're somewhat fortunate that we're not the only ones that have a difficult fixture this week.
So I'm just quickly looking at the ones that we can think of close to us, at least looking even not only below, but also just above us. There's Frosinone Monza, Sassuolo Fiorentina, and I'm talking about match day 19, of course, Udinese Lazio, Then we have Torino, Napoli, Empoli, Milan, Lecce, Cagliari. So, I mean, there's a lot of direct confrontations down there, but it's going to be interesting. I think let's hold that thought here because we're going to have our guest coming right up. Small thing I just wanted to wrap before we go to the break is I know you're against it, but there was an amazing picture that just came out recently from the Genoa CFC pages, the social pages, with Rita Ora wearing the jersey I'm wearing right now. You can't see it, but it's the 130th, the yellow kit. And it's a in my view, and I know you can be perhaps opposite to this, but I think I look at it as a great stunt per se from a marketing perspective, and it gives more visibility, at least from our perspective here abroad, of people that may have not had the opportunity even to think about it.
Yeah, you and I are on differing opinions with this one. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it is good that Genoa are getting their name out there. We're trying to kind of be more visible to other fans. I kind of feel like maybe Jules, my dog, disagrees as well, but it kind of feels to me like we don't have to play in this space. I think you've seen more and more of this. You know, there's the Dua Lipa. I think she's wearing like a Palermo jersey. And I was like, whoa, Dua Lipa, Palermo. Like, order the Palermo jersey that Dua Lipa's wearing. And for me, like, I can't really knock on this so much because I am also a foreign-born fan that came to this club because of the colors and because of the shirt. So for people to put that out there and to get people to come to it and to respond to it, I think that's something that's part of fandom when you're not from an area like that. Like, you get drawn to teams usually in some strange way. Either it's a player that you saw, or, you know, maybe there's someone who follows a team or something, or some other way, but it's usually sort of happenstance. And this is one of the ways to do that. I think for me, I would love to see us be different. That's kind of where I come from with it. Like, yes, you can't really say it's a bad thing because we're still getting exposure, and I'm not shaming Rita Ora for wearing the shirt, but I think like Genoa to me has a unique place in calcio culture and in our overall positioning there because of how diehard Genoani throughout the world are in their support of the club. And it's a uniqueness that's not really matched anywhere else. Like, you and I are following a couple other pages. There's one called Serie A in North America, and they spotlight other teams, and they have little graphics. They had one with like Vasquez putting like a ornament on the Christmas tree with a bunch of other North American players and things like that. And it's good. Like, those are good things. But I really think you can't quite spotlight another fan group in the way that you can spotlight us. And for me, like, there's more of an authenticity in our fandom than there is getting a singer who maybe doesn't know about Genoa beyond they play in Genova to wear a shirt and to pose with the shirt on. You know, like that for me, it feels too transparent to align with what the club is and to align with where we are. Like, I think there's more substance to the club than a gold jersey. But at the end of the day, if it brings people to the club, if it has some people interested, if people look at the club in a positive light, you know, how can you say that that's a bad thing to do? So I think there are different ways to do what we're trying to do. And I think for the most part, that's actually what the team does, is emphasizing. I mean, just look at the Ferraris on game day. Like that's half of what they're doing on a daily basis, is putting that content out there for people to see. But, you know, I get it. To each their own.
As long as they talk about Genoa in one way or another, it makes it more visible there. Ultimately, the only way to do it is to win more and to go up higher.
Right.
And that's the only way really to get more exposure. Anyways, let's go to the break. We have a special guest to talk about our next match, Genoa versus Inter.
My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to La Antenna, bentornati. So we're here with a special guest with us. And why not? We needed someone that knows all the ins and outs about Inter. So I'll let himself introduce who he is and where he's from and what he does. So all we can say is, welcome to our pod, Joe.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Going well. Happy to have you on, Joe.
Thank you so much.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm an Interisti from Chicago. I started following Inter in the 2011-2012 season. Yeah, so it's been a ride since then. When I started following the club, we were way down at the bottom of
Not
where
that down, not that down. Come on.
Well, relatively. We were just beginning the banter era, as we call it. But then, we slowly have risen up to where we are today.
Inter, such a different side from that period of time. There's no question.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Thankfully, also, I have to say, because as you probably know, more or less in words that are being thrown here and there, we're not definitely at all Juve fans. And we need that silly predominancy of that team to go away.
Oh, please. It was such the year we ended their dynasty was beautiful. Even if it was during COVID and we couldn't celebrate properly, it was just amazing to end their run. So,
well, it's I think, while I know we'll talk about it shortly about the aim of the second star and so on, but the fact of having a team that wins for 9 Scudetto in a row, it's just not cool for the outsiders. And no offense to them, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's not a sign of Calcio being healthy.
I agree.
And I'll even say that as an Interisti, it's not. I would love for us to win, but ultimately I know that for the neutral, that's not so fun. And in those years, Calcio kind of really sunk to its lowest point, and it wasn't fun to see. It wasn't the sport during those years. As much as I became a fan, I can tell you that I grew up in a city where we have quite a few soccer fans. They didn't know what I was talking about, and it just. Yeah, it wasn't a healthy period for Calcio.
We definitely have to bring Calcio back to I'm not saying to the levels of the 90s, because that would be like stardom essentially, but to bring back, well, it would be sweet. No question about it. And it could be an aim. It's not really reachable anytime soon, but we can aim towards it. And I think it is time. Italy has been shown, and I think we're still paying a lot of, also partially because of that reason, and more beyond that. It's a larger conversation. But I think, especially in the last few years, we're still showing a lot of teams coming into the finals of the different competitions and so on, and even maybe winning one or two here or there. I think more about Roma for the conference one, but at the same time, it's showing that there is a desire to come back, and that the potential, anyways.
Absolutely, and there's a lot right with Italian football. I think the sporting directors in Italy are the best in the world. I think we see that all over. I mean, the amount of hidden gems that this league finds, and the amount of stretching that is done with budgets is amazing. I think, and obviously Italy produces the best managers in the world too, in my opinion. And it's just, I think we're gonna have 2 great ones managing on Friday too. So it's nice to see.
Well, one will be soon to be, right? I mean, he has shown a little bit. You and I have spoken quite a bit on social, but the potential also with that Gilardino has shown is something remarkable, I think. And it'll take time for him to be, but I think he is one to beat.
Absolutely. I would compare him to a bit of a young Conte, just in terms of playing style. I think they're both very vertical. I think they both like to not have the ball as much. I believe Genoa is still the lowest team with the lowest possession in Serie A, but it's in my opinion, it's not impacted their performances. You wouldn't know. So I really enjoy watching Genoa play.
Yeah, the Conte comparison is an interesting one for sure. It'll be an interesting match, I think. I mean, Inter obviously have been in some amazing run of form. I mean, it's not so bad when you're leading the league in both goals scored and clean sheets kept at the same time. So you got it going on both sides of things, but I think it'll be interesting too, because this is kind of, if there's a litmus test for Gilardino, obviously, our expectations are a little bit different going into this. But if he's able to do anything that remotely resembles, a fighting chance or getting any sort of result out of the match, I think it'll be a really good arrow in his quiver, I guess you say, for him in his managerial career. It's unbelievable. It's only just a couple of seasons, not even 2 full seasons into it. So.
Let's go back to Inter for a second. Obviously, you mentioned the short past, in the recent past anyways, but let's go into this season, year 2023-24, season, I should say. And when we first started the season, obviously there were hopes high, at least for both the Milanese. So obviously then we saw the huge, thankfully so, especially that handball that really didn't go down well for us. But thankfully, in a way, Milan dropped points throughout. Pioli out, Pioli in. We don't know. They don't want him anymore, but they still have him. Anyways, it's a big yo-yo now. Also, Ibrahimovic seems to be back in the game as well, some level of managerial level and so on. But it seems a little bit too late for them to be competitors for the title. So if nothing drastically changes, and knock on wood, obviously, it seems that it's going to be a duo battle between the one team that we talked a little bit earlier, the La Vecchia Signora, so the Juventus, and obviously Inter. So Inter 4 points. You're welcome. For stopping.
Thank you.
For stopping or slowing down at least Juventus. And so 4 points ahead of Juve. And this means closer and closer towards those 2 stars that I mentioned a bit earlier. So that means that it was a great battle to see the 2 Milanese to go against each other in a way to say who is going to win the 2 stars first, because both of them have 19 Scudetti. So having said that, what I wanted to try to say with all this is, how do you see the season so far, and how do you foresee it to be?
Wow. So I would say this has been, at least so far, the funnest season I've had following this club and being a fan. We've certainly played some of the best football I've ever seen us play. You said that the second star is the goal. It is the goal. Some fans, and myself included, will say we have an outside chance of the Champions League, but ultimately he's judged by that second star. At the end, that's all that matters. If Inter get knocked out in the round of 16 of the Champions League, I think I'll be upset for a day, but then I'll move on to what's going on at the weekend, because it's all that matters. It really is all that matters. And the start to the season has been absolutely needed. It's been we couldn't ask for more. But Allegri's Juve does worry me a little bit, because they don't have European football like we do. And I respect Allegri as a competitor. I think we definitely have the better squad. I think we're playing the better football. But I have to be real and say that Allegri's been getting results. So until that ends, we can't count them out.
I mean, a lot of people claim the fact of Allegri's style is defend, counterattack, goal. Okay, let's block it again, defend. Can you really win a Scudetto that way?
That's the ultimate question. He's almost doing it to a point where it's become a parody now, a parody of itself. I think that he's smart enough to do it. I'm not sure he has the quality to do it, especially in attack. I think Chiesa's a great player, but who's partnering Chiesa? And there are a lot of decent to good players. Unless Vlahovic steps up to what they paid for him, then
true. I'm
not sure that there's going to be a partner for Chiesa. It's difficult to say right now. I think that's the only way it could work.
I guess the next question would be, what would Inter look for? And you're going to go to our Canadian guy, but what will Inter look at the January transfer market, and what do you think can Juve obtain or look for?
So with Inter, it's going to be a right wing back. They've already said so. Pepe Marotta, Inter's CEO for sport, has already said they're looking for a right wing back, and that guy's name is Tayshaun Buchanan, the Canadian. Good player for Bruges, who they're looking to buy. This is really his first season playing right wing for Club Bruges in Belgium. They're going to look to bring him in, get him, groom him for a half season. And then because the negotiations for Denzel Dumfries' new contract aren't going well, they're probably going to have him take over that role and sell Dumfries in the summer. That's what the plan looks like as of today. But they need the right wing back now as opposed to the summer, because Cuadrado is going to be out for 4 to 5 months with an Achilles injury. That's kind of what Inter need. As for Juve, it looks like they're going to add 1 to 2 players. Definitely a midfielder, because Pogba and Fagioli have been suspended. And I think that's where they're going to make their real investment. They may also add a defender. I know we're kind of going head-to-head with them for this player named Thiago Jallo, a Brazilian defender of Lille. They may look to anticipate and buy him before his contract expires at Lille in the summer and beat us out. But that's still to be seen. That's just paper talk at the moment.
Yeah. No, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. It always feels like anytime. It's the one thing you kind of don't like about Juve is whenever they get knocked down, it seems like they just go on some crazy flurry inside a bunch of players, and then all of a sudden they're fully restocked and ready to go for the next campaign. But I mean, it's hard to look at where Inter are set up right now and see too many weaknesses in the side. I guess looking ahead a little bit to our matchup, I was going to say at the weekend, really, it's on Friday. With Lautaro recently having an injury, is there any chance that he shows up again? And this one, I'm not sure how likely it is that he plays. I mean, I'm not sure it's going to matter too much just with the attacking talent that Inter have. But is there any news on that ahead of the match at Genova?
Yeah, so it's unlikely he plays. He has a thigh injury, I believe. I thought it looked like a groin injury initially, but it looks like it's what they've said. It's a thigh strain. And it looks like he will miss the Genoa match. I don't even think he'll be on the bench or maybe not even travel. So he'll be back in the next match versus Verona, more than likely. But it will probably be in Arnautovic, Thuram starting up too.
Yeah.
In the 3-5-2.
Yeah, I mean, you guys more than got the job done against Lecce with those two leading the line. But I suppose a minor kind of glimmer for hope for us at Genoano looking towards the match and looking at what we can do. I mean, from an Inter point of view, I mean, I guess it's really hard to say too many weaknesses throughout the campaign. It's been a fantastic start to the season. You mentioned right back being a little bit of a concern with some of the injuries that are going on there. Dumfries also out for a little bit as well. Is there any other places where you kind of have a little more of a question mark? It's probably hard to say given how strong the team have been, but I'm curious if there are other places of worry or of concern at all.
Right. The only thing I would say is where there's a question mark is when Lautaro or Thuram are hurt, can Arnautovic step up?
Yeah.
So far, that's been mixed at best, leaning toward no in terms of Arnautovic's abilities. I still have faith in Marco Arnautovic. He had an injury in late September that really hurt his progress. I think threw off his season a bit, but I think he's going to get back into it. And I think most Inter fans are hoping for the best.
Yeah, it makes some sense too. I mean, obviously he had kind of a resurgent campaign last year at Bologna, and I think it's hard to look at that and say, well, he can't do it at all. Obviously this season's been a little bit different, but you've seen moments where he's also gotten it done this season too. So it's not like he's not done anything all year. But
oh yeah, and I don't think he's been near as bad as many of our fans will make him out to be. I think his hold-up play has been very good. His finishing, not so much. Right. He's still getting in good positions, but he just needs to put that finishing touch. And if you looked at him in the match against Lecce until he got the assist, and even when he got the assist, he looked devoid of confidence in front of goal. When he got the assist, he fell to his knees, practically like, thank God something went right for me. But, until that point, he made a very sad figure. I think I tweeted during the match, what's happening with Arnautovic right now is just very sad because he's just he's doing everything right, but it's just not happening. So I think it's going to happen for him, but fingers crossed for us.
We could definitely sympathize. Obviously, I'm not talking about the same level because that's definitely not what I'm trying to say, but we can sympathize with that type of experience of different players. So specifically who I'm referring to, we talked about in our first half, but Ekuban is essentially that emotional player that is doing everything well, but yet has that bad luck, bad foot, call it whatever you want, bad moment or whatnot. And we're hoping that because of the last two matches that he gets that confidence back, which I think is one of the biggest strong weaknesses that he has. And that's why I'm saying I can sympathize with that feeling. And that I was going to ask you, do you think Arnautovic's problem his confidence or his, that emotional aspect?
Absolutely. As of right now, I think 2 weeks ago it was a bit fitness. Because you could see him in match, he just wasn't showing up at all. Like he was standing around, he made a very isolated figure up top. But now it's a confidence issue because he's holding up the ball well. He's getting involved in play. He's getting in the right positions. Ball's just not going in. And so that's a confidence issue.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Let me turn it around from an outsider's point of view. You and I spoke about the fact of the differences between the preferences or not between the two Genoese sides. But from an outside perspective, you mentioned a few things about earlier on, but what do you think about what has Genoa done so far, and what is that potential? What potential do you see in them?
Wow. So I watched Genoa the season, obviously the seasons before, but then even when they went down to Serie B, I was a big Serie B watcher last season, and I didn't like Blessin, but then once you got rid of Blessin and hired Gilardino, I loved your team. I thought it was built so well, especially the defense. And that is where I really started to fall in love with Dragusin.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's such a good player. He really, even last season in Serie B, I was just like, that guy can be special. And and then when you guys signed Retegui, another favorite player of mine, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. But, I really like a lot of the players Genoa have assembled. I like a lot of the moves they've made. And yeah, it's only made me sympathize with Genoa more. So there's that. I really like Gilardino. I love the tactics that he employs. I love your fans at the stadium. I think you guys are always producing a great atmosphere. And yeah, I'm going to say something a little controversial, but if Inter were cleaned off the map tomorrow, there's nothing stopping me from being a Genoa fan.
Let's go.
Good for you.
That's what we want to hear.
Listen, people, listen and learn.
There's still time. Cuore Rosso Blu. I believe it's deep down inside you somewhere, Joe. It's obviously we love to hear that type of thing about our team. And I hearing you earlier, it's funny when you said earlier in the pod about, Italian football having some of the best sporting directors in the sport, because sometimes you hear Fabry and I talk sometimes about the Mogugno and like the fan complaints and things of this nature all the time. And I think we're not exactly strangers ourselves, obviously, especially the previous era with Preziosi, but even this season you have some players that do well and don't, and it's an easy decision for people to say, oh, well, we got that one wrong. But I think you're totally spot on that there are a lot of players that really shine. Dragusin's a wonderful example. He's a Juve player, never really got a ton of time, kind of this unknown commodity. And all of a sudden he's blossoming, and you look at players like Gudmundsson, and there are others in our kind of category. They're like this, but we're not the only club at all that kind of is showing this. And you have to say the same thing about Inter and the recruitment and the strategies that have gone on there too. All the noise being around Milan and the signings that happened this season, and you look at where the two teams are, there's a lot of great development. And I think it's totally something that's worth recognizing and celebrating, that you're seeing these players come into life in a way that, it doesn't always happen as much in other leagues, I think, than it does in Serie A, which is really cool.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Italian sporting directors. I study sports management, and I want to look for a career in sports in many different areas, not necessarily directly on the field. Yeah. But I think these people are geniuses, a lot of them. Sometimes not the most ethical, as we've seen in several cases. But in terms of building teams, they're second to none. There are significant, I would argue if you compare leagues and if you look at the amount of flop signings, I think there are significantly less in Italy than somewhere like England, just because they have so much more money to blow in England. And, we spend 20 million on a player and he's not very good. Doesn't matter. In Serie A, you have to manage your resources, and that's what makes them really good. Except
Vlahovic, right?
Except Vlahovic.
No, jokes on the side. No, you're absolutely right. It is something tremendous, and I think that's one of our strongholds of the soccer overall, of football or in general, of what that talent and or strength that we probably hold. Let's go quickly back. In the past now, Simone Inzaghi comes on for Inter, loved, hated type of coach. Now, how is he perceived? I guess obviously there has to be some love around him, but how is that love around him?
Since the Champions League run late last season, it's been pure love from our fan base to him. There has never been an Inter coach since Mourinho that the fans have been more in sync with.
Wow.
The Sky Italia reporter quoted what many Inter fans on Twitter call him Il Demone da Piacenza, the demon from Piacenza. And I believe that's correct, right, Fabry? Yes. And the fans love him. I've always been a defender of his, but he's the way he carries himself, the way he represents the club, you can't ask for more from a coach. The only thing we want is the Scudetto. It's the only thing I'm going to ask for. He's got to prove himself a little more. But when he does that, give him a contract, have him write down the numbers and years, and we'll work from there. I would love for him to stay as long as possible.
Well, he definitely has to show up, and now this is his year, so he definitely has to do it. And I can see your point to say it's the second star, the main goal. Who cares? Well, very lightly, I'm saying who cares about Champions League, but at the same time, the Scudetto is the one because this is the second star, and I think nothing can be. We've been wanting it for over 100 years now for our only one, and we're that close, but not close at all if you think about the results. But anyways, that's a different story. So that means that the strongest, and there's no question about it, team in Serie A is going to come to the fortress. Finally, the Ferraris has become again the fortress that has always been known as, and so coming to Genova. This is a match on Friday because we're all playing on Fridays and Saturdays based on the fact of the New Year's, no breaks and so on. But it's going to be on Friday and at the Ferraris. It's already a sold out, and that means that all the guests' standings are obviously been bought out from the Interisti, and Genoa has already almost sold out from the season tickets, and those just got blown out probably in a matter of minutes. But coming into the stadium, as you said, with the fan base so strong and so on, with a sold-out stadium, obviously it's not the San Siro with 70,000, 80,000 people. We're talking about merely above 33,000. But how it's designed similarly in a smaller version, but more compact and closer to the pitch, it gives you that, what we call, obviously, the 12th man strength because of the fans. So I guess let's quickly go into predictions. So give me your take on what do you fear, predict, and look out from this match coming up.
I think this is a crucial week in the Scudetto race. Just because you have Inter going to Genoa, and Inter haven't won in Genoa in some years. And not to mention that Simone Inzaghi has never won in Genoa against Genoa. My concern is that we're going to lose. And I'm not saying that as a jinx or anything. I'm very concerned about this match. I actually on my own podcast, I said when Juve drew against you guys, I said they're going to drop points against Genoa. And I didn't say that because I have, obviously I don't like Juve, but I just felt it coming. And I'm very worried about this match. And with Juve playing Roma on Saturday and us playing you on Friday, this match becomes very important. And I'm very concerned about the outcome. I think you're going to sit back and you're going to absorb pressure. It's going to be up to us to break you down, which we're pretty good at. But Gilardino's teams do it very well. And this is where my concern lies, is that can we break down Genoa? And if you last long enough with that score 0-0, I really am worried about where this match goes, because you could nick a goal at the end.
Except last match against Sassuolo, we usually are the ones that are suffering in the last minutes too.
This is true.
I'm sure that Gilardino has focused a lot on this and trying to. We even seen not using the full entirety of the 5 subs in order to not lose that concentration when needed and so on. But yeah, what do you think, Matt?
Well, I mean, obviously we have a big uphill battle to climb. It's a funny match to think about a little bit, because we were talking earlier about our run of form against the Six Sisters, or however you want to call them, the bigger clubs in Italy have been fantastic. Against the rest of the table, it's been kind of mixed. I think part of that, fantastic evaluation is that we're not expecting to win, and we're getting draws. We're not expecting to get draws, and we've nicked a couple wins here and there. Rome has been kind to us, so that's good. But I think it's an interesting one. I was curious a little bit, just for the shithousery of it, of looking at the referee, because I think that's probably one of the only ways we actually get more than a point out of this match. Daniele Doveri is refereeing the match, and actually we have a pretty good result record with him as the referee. If you look at the last 20, I think he's reffed about 29 matches for us, around the same for Inter. We've won 13 of those, to Inter winning 12. I don't know if there's a whole lot into that, but it's kind of funny and fun to think about if we get any sort of kind of favorable result or draw. I mean, it's total luck, I think, in that kind of aspect of it. I don't imagine a fix that's in for us Genoano. We don't have that power anymore. It's one of the things Preziosi was good for, but that's over. There wasn't really anything he was very good for. But I think it's probably going to be a loss. I think it might be like a 2-1 result or something sort of respectable from from my vantage point, we're, as Joe said earlier, we're not afraid to play without possession, which I think in some ways helps us. But I also worry a little bit if we concede early, we're going to have too many opportunities at the goal. I think Ekuban and Gudmundsson have actually formed a pretty decent pairing for us at the beginning, and so there's something that we could get out of that maybe is more optimistic than if you would have asked us 2 or 3 weeks ago. But at the same time, it's really hard to expect a flurry of chances from us. And I think when you also consider how fantastic Inter's defense have been, I think where we're going to get chances are more than likely going to be kind of the usual suspects for us. We had a lot of goals from set pieces earlier in the season. It's actually happened less for us these last 4 or 5 matches. So maybe we're able to get something there. Maybe the home factor kind of helps us with that type of a thing. It's kind of interesting. I don't know, Fabry, if you've noticed this at all, but in the last few matches, I feel like we've had some decent corners and set pieces that just either have kind of fallen to the wrong guy or we've just not finished very well. I remember a couple that came to Dragusin. He's completely unmarked. Just didn't really control the ball well or something like that. So you never know. I think we'll look pretty solid. I think it'll be a good performance, something that we'll ultimately all feel good about in the end. But I don't know if I see points coming our way after this match, just looking at how strong Inter have been this season.
If you say that we are going to be losing 2-1, who's our goal from?
That's a good question. I think it feels too easy to say Gudmundsson, but I think that's probably what happens if we do get the goal. He's been fantastic. I mean, if it's a set piece, probably more somewhere in the middle of Dragusin, maybe. I think Bani's eligible to play this match. I don't think he's got a yellow card suspension or anything.
No.
So something like that we might see. But I think if it's going to be a player, probably it'll be Gudmundsson.
What about you, Joe, on your side? Where you're talking about, even though you said it's a tie, I mean, you went all over the map because, not in a bad way. I'm trying to say it's like, obviously the team is there. You said if you guys are able to keep the 0-0, and I have a fear of Genoa's goals. So who is going to score if there is going to be any scores?
So I'm going to go against everything I just said. I'm very optimistic by nature. I'm going to predict a slight win, maybe 2-1. If it's going to be goals, I'm going to say Arnautovic will break his drought. And I'm going to say maybe Barella, because he's been very good recently after a rough start to the season. So I'm going to go Thuram, Barella, and then maybe for you guys, Gudmundsson. Yeah.
All right. So this is a tough one. I kind of go hand in hand with Matt to say that our expectation is that we are going to lose. There's no hope with respects to expectations. Obviously, the expectation is to fight it till the end and do the best. Whether we lose 4-0 or 1-0, at least that we tried. Having said that, now I'm going to use Joe's words. If we are able to do that great defensive type of approach to the match in order not to make any mistakes and be very focused, we have all our players back. However, the ones that are more key on making the goals have been out on injury back and forth, and I'm talking about Retegui and Macias. So I don't foresee them. You never know with Gilardino, but I don't foresee them necessarily starting from the beginning. As Matt's point, we have Ekuban and Gudmundsson quite in good sync between the two of them. But on the defense, I think after a couple matches of return from injury for Bani, I think our center has finally, hopefully anyways, got his shine back. And he was our, let's say, director in the back in order to keep at peace and at bay, anyways, Dragusin on the right. And not that they are bad players, but it seemed like missing the central, more experienced player made that difference. And on the left, in the last few matches, we usually had Vasquez, but now we're seeing a little bit more De Winter, and which he has been doing great performances, except a few small mistakes, which were the ones that led to certain goals, but that does not make, obviously, him to get low marks and so on. But all this to say that the prediction is to be a loss. And again, with Inter, it's impossible really to predict it to be a narrow one or a very large one, because I can see both actually can happen. Because if they start to score and then the players start to lose that strength of possibilities of catching up, then it can even get bigger. But at the same time, if we're able not to let that happen, the only way to score is either with a counterattack, which is almost impossible with that at the same time, or with a set piece like a corner with one of those Goodmanson balls that gets that right head of Dragusin or even Goodmanson, I don't know, by ricochet. I don't know. It's
That'll be some cross he'll hit and then run back and hit it.
And back to him. I don't know. It's a tough one. I think it's going to be a loss, but the hope is always there. I really hope to what Joe said before, even though he took it back, but the fact of the fear of losing right at the end and so on. It's one of the, and to your point, Joe, where you talked about that Inter plays first and Juve after, it's one of those things where it is something tough, but it's also something bad for whoever plays after as well, because if you do get that result, they are forced to have that result too. So it plays on both sides. While for Genoa, it doesn't really matter what the result is, because it doesn't really, there was no ever expectation to win. I guess I'm blabbering a whole bunch about this thing and not really saying anything, but ultimately it's going to be an interesting one. But I see us losing, I don't know for how much, but I think there is possibility. Everything is possible. The ball is round, but I think it's Inter's dominancy that is going to happen.
One of our favorite phrases, the ball's round and it can go either any which way. Yeah, I mean, the things, I guess, as a Genoa fan to be somewhat optimistic on, and I would expect we basically have the exact same lineup as we did our last match at Sassuolo, which was effectively the same lineup we had against Juve, just sub Macias for Ekuban, is, we're going to be approaching this match not overly defensively, but when you think about, like, we'll have Vasquez and Sabelli playing as wing backs, kind of, but they're really playing this kind of flexible kind of back four midfield type of a system. You have three center backs. You add in, Frendrup, who is really much more of a defensive player than he is going forward. Badel maybe can kind of fit into more of an 8 that does a little bit of both. But you've got a lot of defensive players on the pitch at the same time. And so, I think we have an organization around us where, keeping this match close isn't something that sounds out of the question. I think it could be something where there's, Inter's brilliance get them a goal, or there aren't that many big things that are different between the teams. I think you expect with just the robustness throughout the side, because you can't really look at it and say, well, Inter have a weaker midfield or something. I think every spot there's really some key players that are there. But as a Genoa supporter and a fan, I think you look at how we have lined up against some of the better teams in the competition. And honestly, I think that game plan is probably not drastically altered against Inter. And that gives you a little bit of a result. And I think, or a little bit of confidence. And I think Joe is right to point out too that, yeah, I mean, maybe there is a little bit of extra nerve with this being the first match of the match week. And that, like, you have to get this thing done and all eyes are on you when you're kind of getting there. Not that the Inter players are not big enough for the moment or something. But I think regardless, it feels kind of like a strangely fun match. It doesn't feel like the first match of the 2021 campaign when we went down with Ballardini when we lost like 3 or 4-0. And you may as well just
Inzaghi's first match, yeah.
Yeah. You may as well just turn the TV off after like the opening 5 minutes. It was like
that was a total disaster year. It was horrible. I know. Anyways, it was just bad. Even that Fiorentina match, the 6-0, would have been this.
I know, we were laughing about Vlahovic, and we probably got him his contract to Juve after that match.
Yeah.
So anyway,
exactly. Anyways, so I would really hope it could be something similar. And here, cover your ears, Joe, because it's not necessarily something that you want to hear. But the match Inter Bologna, which ended in 2-2, so. Obviously, Inter's not going to be happy with that one, but we would be extremely, enthusiastic about it because, stopping the number 2 and then being able to do something with the number 1 is always a dream. But again, as I said before, the likelihood are low, but anything can happen. Anyways, I think we're at a wrap. I wanted to thank Joe tremendously for his support and also his contribution. Why don't you tell us, everyone, where you can be reached at or listened to because of your pod?
Yeah, so I have a pod myself with a few other co-hosts, Dave, Christo, and he's gonna get mad at me. I just started the pod, so he's from Slovenia. We are at Brothers of the World Pod on Twitter, BOTW Pod, at BOTW Pod. I'm at Average Joe on Twitter if you want to hear my bad opinions about Serie A. Yeah, so yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
No, we'll definitely tag you so people you're able to see, catch up with, follow both the pod and Joe himself. I'm always interested in listening and reading what he has to say, especially because I feel that slight pro-Genoa thing that makes me very happy, very happy. Now, obviously, in this match, I think you're an honest guy that if Genoa does pull, I just don't want to see any of those bad things that happen, controversies, and Interisti pull those Juve stunts to say, well, we were robbed and so on, and because of this or because of that. I just want like a nice match, whether we lose or win or tie, as long as, you know, what's fair is fair and what's square is square. But hopefully no weird episode that these VARs and these referees invent to this. Like, even when the Juventini say, oh, this is a Marotta league, I'm like, you guys, that
should be illegal. There's no way that anybody as a Juve fan can say anything like that.
Oh my God, especially
they do it all the time. It's insane.
It's like, if they don't win, if they don't get what they want, then it's all against them. It's like, seriously.
Also, someone should tell them they employed Marotta for 8 years. So maybe look in the mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, thanks again, Joe. Looking forward to have you with us again. But follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Drop us a like, drop us any comment, send us messages, DMs, and whatnot. Never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
But wait, there's more. Show me the hits.
All right, so we're not actually over yet. And Matt, this is going to be a small recording because, you know, the timing and so on and so forth during the holidays is a bit difficult, but we should get a little bit of, to kind of tie it together, quick reactions from this amazing, beautiful tie 1-1 against Inter.
What a performance. What a match. I think this was one you and I were both really worried about. Our listeners will hear about our preview for the pod, for the game. That's kind of what we recorded pre-match, but fantastic result. Gilardino gets it right again. We stand up to the big boys again. Just a very, very deserved point. And honestly, like, you know, maybe you can make a case we deserved a little bit more. Maybe they got a little bit of got away with one with their goal. So the only thing, though, I think you just have to be proud of the club. I don't think you can look at anything with anger, even with that goal being a little bit kind of strange. You just have to look at this as a job well done, and what a ballsy performance, too, to go after it the entire match. I mean, just amazing.
Well, listen, the amazing, to your point, fact of how not only the strategy from Gilardino was tremendously perfect, so great tactician, as we've mentioned several times now. So it's only a growth path from Gilardino's perspective. But the ballsy, as you said, a type of approach from the players themselves, it seemed that Inter was chasing Genoa and not Genoa chasing Inter. So ultimately, it felt, yes, they did score first. Yes, that goal was controversial. You know, we'll be living with these controversial type of goals no matter what. And I think in many other matches, not only the Genoa ones. But ultimately, it ended 1-1. Okay, fine. Who cares? Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, recriminate on things that can't change anyways, right? So, great performance. Let's take that and be proud of it. And I'm sure everybody is. And this team, if you look at it, the one that's the starting 11, I think, except one, was our Serie B team too.
Unbelievable.
Let's quickly hear what Joe has to say about the match.
Hi, guys. I'm recording right after the Genoa-Inter match, which ended in a 1-1 draw. And it was kind of what we thought it would be in the preview. Very, very physical, ugly match. Inter's goal came from a goal in the 43rd minute by Marko Arnautovic, and it was a bit of a lucky goal. It came against the run of play. Bisek probably did foul, I forgot who that, Bonnie in the build-up. I think it was Bonnie. And it probably should have been chopped off for that. Looking at it again, it wasn't, it was a foul. It was a foul. So it's definitely very lucky. And then Genoa, of course, come right back to the other end. You guys were killing us on set pieces all match. And Dragusin, who's very good from set pieces, does what he does.
Goodmanson, high ball, players going down. Header! It's in from Dragusin! The Gradinata Nord gets exactly what it wanted at the end of this first half. And their Romanian Colossus hammers in the equalizer.
And 1-1 in the extra time of the first half, which lasted forever. And then the rest of the match was just really a slog. I mean, it's like walking through mud. Really difficult to watch. From an Inter perspective, it was probably the worst we've played all season. Maybe you could argue that Sociedad in the Champions League was worse, but I would say this was really bad, and that's credit to Genoa in large part. Gilardino set his team up very well. Inzaghi pointed out after the match kind of what we thought. Genoa was in a mid to low block, but you had quite a bit of the possession, more than I thought they would have, and off counters it was very, very deadly. That was absolutely credit to you guys. And the atmosphere, let me just say, the atmosphere at the Marassi was crazy, crazy, crazy. I tweeted about it, and I saw Inter fans even saying, this match, your fans were absolutely sensational. Fair play to you guys. You know, this is obviously I'm recording this before the Juve-Roma match tomorrow, but hopefully there will still end up being a point gained on Juve, but you know, it was a deserved draw in the end. Frustrating from our perspective, but, you know, that's what we deserved. So, fair play to you guys. Thank you so much for having me on, and looking forward to welcoming Genoa to the San Siro when, I think, March or February. So, talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you, Joe, for your comments. They were you were right. We did predict that it was going to be a tough match. It was a tough, but at least from our perspective, of course, because you were wanting the 3 points, obviously, from an Interista perspective. But I think also from the neutral eyes, it was a quite the performance.
I mean, I think that's what you have to say for anybody coming in and watching it. Obviously, Interista, you would expect they would be disappointed from this one and not getting the result that was there. But I think you just have to look at, on the whole, an amazing, aggressive performance, a match that had a lot going on, even for just a 1-1. And again, you just have to be proud of the boys and proud of how aggressively Gilardino and the team approached the match.
Dragusin's pay stub or whatever, price ticket is going skyrocketed. Everyone's talking about Dragusin to be like the best defender in Serie A right now. He's on the mouth of everyone. Let's try to keep him as tight as possible, and let's see what happens there. For sure, Grifoni, just reassure yourselves, he's not going to leave us in January, because I just want to repeat it so everybody remembers. The club has extensively remembered and said that key players are not going to be sold in January. Only others, per se. I'm not going to give examples because nothing is certain yet. But these important ones are not going to be sold, at least in January. Maybe in the summer, because we know how, in order to survive, you have to sell in order to buy, too, right? So, anyways, I think we're good to go for finally for the wrap. And I wanted to say Buon Anno, Happy New Year to everyone.
Buon Anno. I can't believe it. It's going to be 2024 the next time we record. So
the year of the dragon.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
That's perfect. Very fitting.
All right. Don't forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
5, 4, 3. Wait. Does anybody here even have a watch? No. Well, bound to be midnight somewhere. 2, 1. Happy New Year!
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genuani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.